welcome to the Ada County Highway District regular commission meeting. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance and to the republic
Again, welcome. We'll begin the meeting with the motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I have four items on the consent agenda that I'd like to just discuss briefly, just simply to ask a few questions. So that is my only issue on the agenda.
Okay. When we approve the consent agenda, we'll take those one by one.
Great, thank you.
So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved?
A second? Did I miss a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Now the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion, and there will be no separate discussion on these items unless somebody requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda, and all consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. And we will deviate from this for just a moment because we didn't have a pre-commission meeting today because of our executive session. And Paul, if you could come up, Commissioner McKinney has a couple of questions with regards to the consent agenda items that probably will just be an easy answer.
Yes, I suspect so. We have, there are four piggyback purchase agreements on the consent agenda, items 2, 3, 4, and 5. First, the first two and 3, relate to a chip spreader and an oil distributor. Just for my information, I'm assuming these are to replace some existing ones that have worn out. Is that the case?
That is correct.
Okay. So are the current ones still in use, but the prediction is that by the end of this season, they'll be at the end of their life and need to be gotten rid of?
They are still in use. I believe the spreader we are going to save for the third site. So the spreader we're going to save for the third site, but the distributor will be a replacement.
Okay. And so how old are these pieces of equipment?
They are, the chip spreader is 10 years old. It's high wear and tear item. And the oil distributor, I believe, is 12 to 15 years old.
Okay. So, and is 10 years about the typical life expectancy for a chip spreader?
Yes.
Okay. And I assume it's all the abrasive
All the
chips
chips,
and
the high
such that
wear and
wear
tear.
everything out.
Correct.
Is there any salvage value in it?
We will go to auction with it. Yes.
Okay. So it can actually be, okay, so we'll be able to offset the price because I think.
But we are going to keep that one for the third site.
I'm
So
sorry?
that'll be for the third site. So the chip spreader will not go to auction. It will be going to our third site.
So the
Perfect.
chip spreader and the oil distributor are both going to be, we're not actually going to get rid of them. We're going to put
Correct.
them at our third maintenance site.
Correct.
Okay. But we're buying two new ones. Okay. Then I guess next question relates to items 4 and 5, the purchase of Commuteride promotional items and clothing. The promotional items, I assume that's a variety of things that are done for basically publicity purposes.
Correct.
For Commuteride, and I get that. $20,000 worth of tchotchkes, but I guess we're talking they're given out in many different places, many different times, and
Correct.
I get that. The clothing, talking about the clothing agreement, what clothing are we talking about?
We have a variety of clothing, shirts, blouses, sweatshirts, hats that with our ACHD logo that the employees are allowed to purchase.
Does this have to do with the shoe vouchers as well, boots and stuff?
Shoe vouchers are a separate item, but we pay for our steel-toed shoes. We pay a
Oh.
certain amount up for steel-toed shoes.
Okay, so the $63,000 in clothing we're talking about is not, it's not purchased and just given out, it's purchased and resold to employees.
No, what we do is each employee is allowed, depending upon where you work, some of that out in the field. And then
I wonder, is your microphone on? Yes, it is. Oh, okay, sorry.
No, excuse me, guys. Sorry, I can't hear.
Commissioner
Mr. Daigle
McKinney?
this last
I think
bit.
Commissioner Pickering is saying she can't hear.
Oh,
Anyway,
Yeah, I couldn't hear Mr. Daigle for the last bit here.
can
better
you hear me
repeat
now?
yourself.
Doesn't sound like it's on.
Okay. So what I was saying is, depending upon where our employees work, they're either allotted $75 or $100 for clothing items. Anything that they want to purchase over and above that amount comes out of their pocket.
okay, all right. Okay, I think that, that covers my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, then we will go to our regular agenda, which there's nothing on the regular agenda. We just have a whole lot of people here because they like being here. Anyway, so we'll go into our public communications. Graciela, has there anyone signed up to speak to us today?
No.
Then the commission meeting is adjourned and we'll go into our work sessions.
President Goldthorpe, Commissioners, we do have one change to the work sessions. Gary Enselman had a family emergency, and he had to run to the emergency room to be with his family. So we're going to reschedule that for another time, but we do have Stormwater here to give you a briefing on the NPDES permits.
Cool.
Mr. President, can I take a moment to go
Yes.
use the restroom? And
Absolutely. We'll take a 5-minute break here.
Perfect.
Ouch.
Well, Mary, I'm hoping today is our last 100-degree summer.
I am too.
We've had too many of them.
No, he's just in.
Oh, okay.
Yes, oh, because it was men's thing.
Well, yeah. Odors, which are also different directions. You know? big projects that have hit us. We don't,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our work session. This will be on the NPDES permit update, and I'll introduce Erica just by telling you that in the 6.5 years I've been here, I have been really impressed with how well she knows her stuff. So, Erica, I would ask you as you begin, unless you've already done this during our 2 new commissioners orientation, if you could briefly tell what has changed in the relationship we have, who we report to on this permit with EPA and now DEQ and why and all that good stuff.
Yeah. President Goldthorpe and commissioners, that's what my briefing's about.
All
So-
right.
You're right on. So if you have any other questions afterwards, I'm happy to answer them if I don't.
My ears must have been burning.
So for the record, my name is Erica Anderson McGuire. I am the Environmental Department Manager here at the Highway District. And today I will be giving you an update on our NPDES permit. So with that, let's see if I can see how this works.
Erica, sorry to interrupt you right in the beginning of your presentation, but that microphone is cutting out. for
Okay.
those of us
H-
that
How
are
about
on
if I
Zoom.
talk closer to the mic? Can you hear that better?
That's a lot better.
Okay,
Thank
that's-
you.
So now I'm going to see if it's how to make this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so just a little summary of what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. I'm going to briefly go over what NPDES is and why we do it, how it relates to our stormwater regulations. I'll get into the IDEQ and EPA. Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think that's what you were talking about. And then talk some more about our permits and what our permits require us to do, some of the activities that we do, and then our reporting requirements and how those have changed. So why do we do NPDES and what is it? NPDES stands for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit Program. It was enacted in 1972 as the Federal Water Pollution Control Act. It's now called the Clean Water Act. That's something that we're more familiar with. Back in the late 60s or even before then, there were a lot of pollution issues. The photo here is the Cuyahoga River on fire in 1969, and that kind of set the stage to get going and say, hey, we've got a problem here. Water's on fire. So the purpose of NPDES is to regulate wastewater treatment plants, industries who discharge their waste into waters of the U.S. and to regulate them through a permit-based system. And the goal is to have all waterways fishable and swimmable by 1985. So we still got some work to do. So how does stormwater fit into that? Well, along with the wastewater treatment plants and industrial discharges, it was noted that stormwater discharges are also dirty and they have pollutants in them. So they decided, Congress in 1987 passed a law through the Clean Water Act to address stormwater from municipal facilities, cities, with populations over 100,000, construction sites that are larger than 5 acres, and industrial sites stormwater. And then it was updated again in 1992 to address smaller communities, as well as take down that acreage for construction sites to 1 acre or more. So that's where we stand. That the Clean Water Act, at least with regard to NPDES, has not been updated since then. And so here we are in July, well, just last month, IDEQ, our Department of Environmental Quality, is now taken over the primacy, or what we call oversight, of our stormwater program. In the past, we were regulated by EPA Region 10 out of Seattle, and now the program is IPDS instead of NPDES, Idaho Pollutant Discharge Elimination System program. So what's the difference between IDEQ oversight and EPA? Well, we just got it started, but I will say that DEQ is new to the stormwater arena. Their capacity, their staff, they're learning stormwater. They haven't been doing it forever. They have very limited staff on it, and they've staffed up, but they're new to it. We will now have permit fees associated with our permits. In the past, we didn't pay any fees for any of our federal permits. We will have permit fees. The permit fees basically fund the program.
ACHD will be paying fees to DEQ, but we'll still be responsible for the drainage, the
Correct.
stormwater system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the permit fees will basically pay for the program. The state of Idaho has allocated a limited amount of money in their budget, and then the fees are expected to pay for the rest of the staff and the staffing of that program.
Do you have any idea how much the fees are going to be?
I do not know from the municipal standpoint. The construction site permits are pretty manageable, like $100 or something like that. It's all based on acreage and size. The way the stormwater fees were lumped in with the municipal wastewater fees. And they're designated by dwelling units. Well, it works everywhere in the state except for Ada County, where we have a highway district that's in charge of the storm drain system instead of the cities. So our fees are lumped in with the city of Boise and the city of Meridian. So we discussed this, and we'll see where that moves forward. But we will likely be taking on some of those fees.
But we don't collect fees, stormwater fees from property, that just comes out of property taxes, right?
Correct. Well, yeah, there are no stormwater fees, no.
Or people who pay property taxes. There's a lot of exempt property that has stormwater in our county.
Yeah, I mean, we do not have a stormwater fee here in Ada County. Other communities may have them, but we do not. The other issue, one of the other things with DEQ is they are right next door. And I say that literally and figuratively. Their offices are right up the street from us here and right across the parking lot at Orchard. I don't know why this is, there we go.
Erica, do you have any idea why the EPA decided to back away from this themselves and hand it over?
So the EPA did not back away per se. The state of Idaho solicited EPA to take over primacy. This has gone on for numerous years, probably over a decade ago. It went to the legislature and it was not successful. There were some, mostly industries that were very interested in having that primacy taken over. I think in general, people don't want to be regulated by the federal government. And, that's kind of where we started down this road 5-6 years ago. The Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, IACI, started the ball rolling on this, and it was successful through the legislature, and they approved the state to take over the primacy.
Do you have any idea if the success that DEQ has had with the air quality program influenced this at all?
I have no
Okay.
idea. Yeah. Sorry, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Sorry, I just had some questions.
Yeah. So we do have a designated compliance officer for us. That's a little different. In order for DEQ to maintain their agreement, their primacy or oversight agreement with EPA, they will have to meet quotas with regard to number of inspections that they complete and audits that they complete. So we will see them likely more than we have seen EPA in the past. And to attest to that, we have experienced definitely an increase in calls from DEQ asking about our operations or activities that are associated with our right-of-way or our ACHD facilities. So with ACHD, we have a couple of permits. We have a phase 1 permit, and that's the first one we got, and that covered Boise and Garden City. And we are scheduled to get a new updated permit in October. We also have a phase 2 permit that covers the Boise urbanized area except for Boise and Garden City. So Meridian, Eagle area, Southwest Boise, unincorporated Southwest Boise. What's different about these 2 permits is the first one, we have co-permittees. We have entities that also are permitted, and we work together and we help each other out. With the second one, we have no co-permittees. So the city of Meridian is not permitted, so they don't help us out as much. So it comes down to stormwater issues.
Excuse me, Mr. President?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Under co-permittees, Boise Garden City, DD3,
Drainage, Ada County Drainage District 3.
Okay.
And BSU, and then ITD District 3.
so, okay, so I guess that's a new one to me, drainage districts. How many drainage districts are there?
There are many, but when this all started back in the mid-90s, Drainage District 3 ended up getting a permit. Several of the other ones dropped out. It's fairly complicated, but Drainage District 3, the way their system works, it is a drainage system. It is used like a municipal storm sewer system, and they discharge their drainage water in the southeast part of town into Drainage District 3's system, so they're considered an MS4.
So what are drainage districts? Are these quasi-governmental entities? Are they private what are they?
They're quasi-governmental agencies. I'd have to refer to
Okay, because
Mr. Price on that.
I have to confess my ignorance on this, that even though I've been involved in designing storm drainage systems in the past, I'm not familiar with drainage districts.
Yeah, there's numerous ones. We have Drainage District 2, number 3. I think those are the primary ones we use
Okay.
in Ada County, at least.
How many are there in Ada County?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I do not know.
All right, thanks.
And then our last type of permit is our construction general permits. So we get those for our roadway projects that are disturbed greater than 1 acre, when we have 10 active permits at this time. So the way the permit's set up is that we are required to implement a stormwater management program. This is a list of all the different areas that we cover that are covered in our permit, and we have requirements associated with each one of these, and I'll just briefly give you some examples in the next few slides of what these entail. So for public education and outreach, we are asked to work with our stakeholders to educate folks on what they should and shouldn't be doing associated with the storm drain system. We've got a couple examples here of some social media outreach regarding how to deal with your pool, how to work with basins and swales, and how neighborhoods should be dealing with those. Working with student groups, we've got to mark storm drains and the like. Working with professionals, how to, on their designs of these facilities. Those are just some of the examples. One of the things that is new is that we are required to assess how effective our messaging is. So hopefully we'll be able to work with our communications team on that to help us out. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. People dump stuff in the street in the right of way. And it ends up in the storm drain system, which then ends up in our Boise River, creeks, and other associated waterways. So this program is set up to help stop those illicit discharges. We have a dry weather screening outfall program. We have approximately 1,200 outfalls that discharge into waterways in the county. Through this program, we are required to inspect these at least once every 5 years. And then if they are draining, then we need to go back and collect samples to see what's in that water. It comes down to that. We also have a complaint response, respond to people complaining. The middle picture is, you know, fairly typical. Neighbors call us, their neighbor's car is dumping oil in front of their house and it's dirty. So we address those. Construction site program. This is, trying to get the contractors to have nice clean sites so that their discharges don't end up in our right of way and clog our storm drain systems or into our flow into the river. So we do site plan. Folks are required to design a stormwater pollution prevention plan. We review those plans, and then they're expected to implement them. And we provide, and we do some inspection on those to make sure that folks are doing the right thing. For example, the photo on the right is correct. The other one is not. Post-construction, new development, redevelopment. These are our facilities that get built with new roadway projects, or in the case of subdivisions, new drainage facilities within the subdivision. The photo down below, the first one is a picture of one of our green stormwater infrastructure facilities off of Royal Boulevard. These are, the green is emphasizing use of vegetation, natural ways to clean up the water. We also are required to look at our specifications. We provide plan review and approval through development services, as well as we look at ours for our own facilities as well. And we have to have a database to track how we're maintaining these. So, and there's a lot of them. There's thousands of them.
Mr. President,
Yes.
could we go back one more slide? I just have a question, Erica. So on the required specifications, can you explain some of those from a high-level standpoint?
Commissioner Pickering, I'm sorry, but I was not able to understand your question.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about the required specifications that are listed here on this slide?
Sure. So we have two policies. We have policy 8000 and policy 8200. Those are our drainage standard policies for ACHD. And in those two policy sections, it goes into all great detail of all the engineering specifications and the like that we require of each of our facilities. So 8200 is literally the design specifications. There's pictures of the types of best management practices that we allow and what we expect when they're designed and constructed. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps. I would really like to, if somebody can send it to me after the meeting, that would be great. I'm just curious, do you also allow xeric and natural native plants to be part of those specifications?
Yes, Commissioner Pickering, yes we do. We, in policy 8200, there are specific best management practices that are considered GSI, or green stormwater infrastructure, and we do specify native drought-tolerant plants in those dry facilities.
Thank you.
I understand we now have somebody on staff whose sole reason for living is going to be to make those swales beautiful and more functional.
We do have a person on staff who's working on trying to fix the old ones as well as help get the new ones built properly. And it's challenging.
No kidding, yeah.
Because I saw that, we had staff at one point weed whacking some swales, and it just seems, like a missed opportunity because we should be putting plants in there that don't need to be weed whacked, for example. And yeah, it would just, be more efficient with staff time. But looking forward to, going through that policy a little bit more in depth, Erica. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next one is our stormwater and street management. This is our good housekeeping type practices that we have within our yards, along with our streets. We have requirements associated with how many times we need to clean our catch basins in a year, and we have a sweeping schedule. We are required to meet how many times certain types of streets and roadways are to be swept in a year. And then ensuring that our materials that we use in our roadway operations are managed and stored properly.
How often do we, if we're only in there once every 5 years, is that the only time we can detect the presence of toxic chemicals? Or does, if toxic chemicals are getting into the wastewater and obviously getting downstream into the system, and we're only there a few times, how do we detect that before it starts causing damage? Because I know industries have to do that; they're tested and so forth. But the stormwater system can come from many, many non-point sources.
Right. Yeah, Commissioner Hanson. President Goldford, with regard to the dry weather discharge program, it is tough because we can't get there as many times. But that's why now once we recognize that they're flowing, we will then go back to them and see if they're flowing again. And if they are, we will sample. So that's kind of how we address that. And we'll sample and evaluate what's in there. We're looking for, oftentimes we might find detergents or something like that, and then trying to go back to the source. Why is that there? What's that associated with? Or maybe it might have a high E. coli content. We found one in the downtown core several years ago, only to find out that the sewer was hooked up to our storm drain. So it does happen, but it's kind of cool when you figure out that there's...
Yeah. And then you go back to the EPA or the DEQ, and they're the enforcement agency. So we sort of do the initial.
Yeah, in that situation, we worked with the city, and the city had them required the property owner to hook back up to their sewer and disconnect from ours. Yes, in a very timely manner, no less.
But we caught that in time. It wasn't 5 years. It was.
No, it was a fairly new system. It was pretty brand new, so somebody messed up somewhere.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Lastly, I've got the industrial commercial stormwater discharge. So this is we work with the city of Boise and Garden City to inspect these facilities for us on our behalf, and then if hopefully we don't find anything, but sometimes we do. And this is an example. This is one of the breweries downtown. They've got all of their old mash or whatever you call it, grains sitting out there in barrels and leaking into the storm drain. So we have to get them to, it's kind of a continual battle at times to not have them discharge that into the storm drain because they're actually right by the river there. So just quickly, some highlights. We are required to do quite a bit of quite a bit more of staff training in our first 6 months. So we'll be working with our training, our staff in HR to help us out with that. We have some additional pollution reduction activities we need to do in the phase 2 permit area. We are now reporting electronically, and so that reporting format is different. We are required to address things in our procedures to include escalated response procedures. So we'll review what we have and be addressing those as well. So these are just some of the highlights of different new things that we'll be doing. And from a reporting standpoint, our MS4, like I had said, it's now electronic. The emphasis is us, for my staff, we'll be continually updating our Stormwater Management Program documents. That'll be the basis for what we do, and then we'll be using that information to submit in our electronic reports, which are significantly lighter in information, but we'll have that other for our audits, which we will be audited by DEQ. That has been made known. We have been audited in the past by DEQ, but we will EPA, but we will likely be audited by DEQ more often. And the director gets to sign all of those, so he is the responsible body for those. And with regard to the CGP, the construction general permit, it's pretty much the same, and it's online, and it has been online. So with that, I'm happy to take any other questions you may have.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Erica, with the regulations switching to DEQ, are there any other things does this open the door or create things that the legislature now has to also have some regulation over this work in stormwaters, in the stormwater systems at all?
Yeah, Commissioner Pickering, yes, before Idaho could take over the primacy of the program, EPA required that the state approve all of the basic Clean Water Act regulations. So that's already been done, and they are part of the IDAPA Idaho rules. The state basically adopted them as that state requires that they cannot adopt anything more stringent than what is currently in the federal books. And that's what they did.
So thank you. Is there, and of course this might be outside of your realm, but you probably know the answer, excuse me, but with, cities and urban renewal districts building stormwater facilities, are they also going to be audited and under the same design features that DEQ may provide, or is there still going to be some variation based off of if it's a city or an ECHD stormwater system?
Commissioner Pickering, the cities have their own policies with regard to stormwater facilities, just as the highway district does. So for those those commercial projects and the like, they get reviewed through their planning and development process. That's that's how they work.
How much variation is there between the cities and ACHD and our guidelines and requirements for stormwater systems? Is there a big variation or not so much? Is it pretty consistent or not so much?
Commissioner Pickering, they're pretty consistent. They're pretty comparable. We've updated ours in 2017 to address our previous permit, and I believe the city of Boise did the same, and Garden City went on and did the same as well. I am not familiar with the city of Meridian's because they don't own and operate the storm drain system, and so they're they kind of do. We just don't work very closely with them. with regard to stormwater.
They don't have near as much of a chance to empty anything into the Boise River either, do they?
They don't have the Boise River, but they do have the 5 Mile Creek
10
and
Mile
10
Creek,
Mile Creek,
yeah.
8 Mile Creek that are all considered waters of the U.S. and discharge directly into the Boise River. So they do have, they're important.
Well, I watch what happens by the wastewater treatment plant in Meridian, and as long as I see the fish living in in the creek there below the wastewater treatment, I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, it's probably nice and warm there for 'em.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just have a quick question, Erica, and this kind of maybe goes a little bit outside the intent of this presentation, but you commented that the NPDES permit requirements apply to construction sites of greater than 1 acre. I assume that's an EPA requirement that's come down, is that correct?
President Goldthorpe, Commissioner McKinney, that's correct. That's part of the 1992 requirements. And then in our permits, we also regulate under 1 acre as well through our policy, but it's a very standardized permitting process that we do. Our permit requires us to look at things even under that size as well.
Okay, so what's involved then?
So, per our policy, I would say that I think if it's greater than 500 square feet or more, then they need to develop a more site-specific plan for us. These are often sewer projects that we get that are really deep and dirty, and so they just generate a smaller a plan that shows how they're going to protect the storm drain system for that area that they're going to be working in.
Okay. I have to admit, 500 square feet, that sounds awfully small.
It's not particularly big. I think it's 500. It could be 800.
Okay.
It's a linear and a square footage.
Right.
I
Okay.
apologize, but
To your knowledge, okay, so these requirements were put in place in 1992. To your knowledge, has anyone looked at whether going after things that are that small has really provided a payback, or whether it's, has anyone done a cost-benefit analysis of, getting down to 1 acre construction sites versus saying, you know what, let's worry about the bigger things? And anyway, do you know if anyone's done that?
So, President Goldthorpe, Commissioner McKinney, we have a local example that I think is really helpful. Prior to implementing these rules, the Boise River had was impaired for sediment upstream here in the Boise area, and that impairment pretty much disappeared about the same time that we started implementing all of these construction site requirements with our NPDES permits. We no longer have a TMDL, a total maximum daily load requirement limitation on the river up in the Boise, I think to Eagle area, that's a big deal. So that's an example of how they work. And has there been a study, overall study? I can't say that I know a study, but just it's everywhere. You can see our stormwater facilities, their lifespan increases significantly because we don't, we're working on eliminating that sediment from clogging those systems. Many of our systems are infiltration-based systems and seepage beds in the ground, and though those are not officially regulated through NPDES, those are being saved from the sediment, as far as I'm concerned, because we ask people to put sediment bags in the catch basins. We ask people to sweep the streets, at the end of their business workday. These are not oftentimes significant requirements, but a little bit goes a long way in protecting the public's infrastructure and assets. So it's of great value.
Okay, great,
It's
thank
certainly
you.
in my opinion, but I think we have examples to prove it, and we could probably put a number to that if
Well,
necessary.
and I do have to agree that the environmental, attention to environmental issues has made a big difference. I've actually been, I was interested to see your picture of the Cuyahoga River that was burning in 1969. Lake Erie was practically a toxic. I've been swimming in Lake Erie a couple of years ago, and I'm still alive and no ill effects that I can tell. So in any case, the reality is, and a lot of people don't realize this perhaps, or maybe don't appreciate it, but our air and water are dramatically cleaner today all across the country than they were when I was a child, for example. 40, 50 years ago, things were much worse than they are now. So, it's the environmental regulation area is kind of it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it hurts, and on the other hand, it does some benefit. And the questions of benefits versus costs is always going to be an ongoing question. So I appreciate your presentation.
I remember when I first came to Idaho, and seemed like very often, I don't know how often very means, but very often we'd have stories that there were PCB discharges in the river and all kinds of crap. It was awful. And it's almost drinkable now.
It's very much cleaner.
Yeah.
It still has a little ways to go, but it is cleaner, thanks to a lot of people's hard work, honestly. Yeah.
So, Mr. President and Erica, I really appreciate that. I think that my fellow commissioners have hit it on the head, that we're in a good position to help lots of people, little property owners, big property owners, understand that everybody has a stake in making sure the system works well. I just want to, and this is something probably even more directed at Mr. Price, because he's thinking about things to take to the legislature, is that as the state has taken over primacy and they're thinking about, okay, we need to turn then to local governments, highway districts and cities to pay us to help do the enforcement side. And we, of course, have very limited tools. We rely on the property tax. So I wonder whether there might be some system set up, whether other states have it, where there's actually a fee for properties, payment in lieu of taxes, because stormwater hits the ground regardless of whether the property is exempt from property taxes or not. And yet those folks don't pay for you and our system. And so whether that might be a system to help at least alleviate the temptation to say, well, we need to fund this program at DEQ, let's just keep raising the fees to local governments, and the government saying, well, the only thing we can turn to is the property taxpayer, and yet this is an important thing. We don't want to not do it, but we also want it to work well. And as soon as you stop enforcing effectively, there are going to be some bad players out there who say, the chances of us getting caught are diminishing because they have hardly any resources for enforcement. So.
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, you kind of hit one of the lingering issues that's been going on in both Erica's career and mine. And we've tried to address it in the past, but one of the difficult things was Idaho was one of the very last states to take primacy. There's a couple. But for years, we were one of four that declined to take primacy, and that created a bunch of difficulty for us because we were regulated by the DEQ. And you are correct. Enforcement, we don't have guns and badges like the cities do and the municipals. So we struggle with the enforcement piece, and we've tried to do it with agreements with our co-permittees. But yeah, if you can't enforce it, there's that. But one thing we did, I don't know if some of you remember Sally Goodell when she worked here. She most certainly had a lot of energy for a lot of things, and this was one of those things. She had a lot of background and experience in stormwater, but in any event, we worked with the DEQ and held a kind of a summit with all of the interested parties, including drainage districts, irrigation districts, which includes really the ag industry as well as the municipalities, and looking at a creating what's called a stormwater utility. And at that time, there wasn't an appetite. It was close, but we were also in a big lawsuit with Settlers Irrigation at the time, which proved to be difficult. But I think now that Idaho's taken the other difficulty is that Idaho, we've got this state law about minimum that, we can't create anything more really stringent than the federal standard, but we can create through administrative rules some process. But we have ordinance authority. I know Pocatello tried a stormwater utility and they kind of got whacked in the head on it. But I think as time goes on and as the primacy and the funding mechanism starts to go up with these municipalities, and the cities are really, we're in this odd deal that there's going to be this cost recovery deal where that discussion I think you'll see it. But I do agree with Erica that the Idaho DEQ is on following the program. They're just in their infancy, just happened. They're a little short-staffed. They're kind of trying to get their balance, and I think in time we'll be able to explore the stormwater utility. And how they typically work is you're charged based upon the square footage and probably linear of impervious surface,
Right.
because that's how stormwater is really generated. But I will tell you, I mean, I worked with Erica and her team for at least 19 years, and we're both carbon dating ourselves, but we've had a host of stormwater issues. That department has done some really innovative things. I think, Commissioner Hanson, you're here when Joan came out with some green design standards, the manual that Commissioner Pickering was alluding to, which is really on the cutting edge. We've done some great things, and the Commission has supported the idea of beautifying our stormwater facilities instead of having this, this trench along Eustick Road or Cloverdale or whatever, that we're trying to make them a little bit more aesthetic pleasing with some other features. So the program's come a long ways, but I will tell you that within the state, everybody's looking to ACHD for really the standard on how to do it.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I think we should continue those conversations, and I think the property owners who aren't, are exempt from property taxes would be very interested, because, in the long run, they have to maintain those gigantic parking lots, and if they could build them with an incentive towards, green stormwater systems that don't put that much stormwater into the larger system, they'd be going there.
Oops, any other questions?
No,
Mr.
good job,
President,
Erica.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you very much. This was extremely informative. I know I learned a few things today too, so thank you very much.
Yes.
Welcome, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, before we are fully adjourned, Paul Daigle has a couple of things for us from the director as a director's report that we need to hear.
Commissioners, a few housekeeping items that the director asked me to remind you of. First of all, the 50th anniversary on August 11th, right out in the front parking lot. And I'm going to bring up Sherry Canals. She has your open enrollment forms that we need signatures on. We'll have a contract we'll need some signatures on. And we also have the VRT letter for signature as well. So without further ado.
Okay, Commissioners, just very quickly, this is our open enrollment period for our medical and dental insurance. So from August 2nd through August 20th, you have an opportunity if you want to switch from your dental plan between Willamette and Delta Dental, you'll have an option to do that. You also have an option to add on dependents onto your health insurance or your dental insurance without a qualifying event. I know not all of you are participating in the medical program or the dental program, but this is also an opportunity that if you change your mind and you would like to join those programs, this would be the opportunity to do that. Great news again this year, we had no increases in our medical or dental rates. Yay! Best news, and no changes in the plans as well. So we've been able to maintain that incredible deductible of $200 on our medical insurance. I have a packet for each of you, even though you may not be participating. It will include some information about our overall benefits. It also contains some compliance information as it relates to healthcare notices. And then finally, we do have the additional life insurance that was offered through standard insurance. If you currently have that and would like to increase those rates, now is also the open enrollment period for that. If you're not enrolled in that and you would like to add that additional insurance, you will also be able to do that. So I have your packets. Commissioner Pickering, I can go ahead and mail yours to you if you'd like.
I can come to you, Sherry.
Okay, I'll hang on to it. All right,
Okay.
with that, I'll hand out the packets and I'm wrapped up unless you have questions.
And while Sherry's handing those out, I'm going to hand out your updated budget books.
Mr. President, budget still previous
I'll swing by this afternoon and grab that if that's all right, Paul.
Paul?
Did you hear my question?
Yep. Okay.
Commissioner, option 4 will be published to the website today, the same one we sent to the paper.